All right, this is episode 1. Timely because I think the leaf blower man is off of your porch. So we're good. I think sound is crystal clear. Maybe you can't hear me, but I think audio is working throughout. This is going to be a fun exploration. This is a jumping off point, September 13th, 2023. Recording episode 1. Did you ever think that you'd be on Spotify at any point?
No, I didn't even realize until you said that this was going to be on Spotify.
It's kind of funny. I recorded my first one of these ever with a friend, and I was like, wow, this is one I didn't expect to cross off the bucket list. I'm not an artist, but like a creator on Spotify.
What's the split if this booms right here?
I don't know. We probably should have worked that out before a live recording.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we'll be on Spotify. We'll have a back catalog. That's exciting. I think there's a fun stat that 99% of podcasts don't get to 20 episodes. So I think that's our goal here, to try to deliver content that's entertaining, educational, about entrepreneurship, about startups, about sports entertainment, about life, about stuff that's interesting to us. Probably pretty unformatted at first, but we'll begin to get focus as we get better. So appreciate all 2 listeners, mom and dad, that are listening in on episode 1. Yeah, we'll get it started from here. I think the first place to naturally start.
How come you're a little blurry on your end?
I think it just appears like that. I think the post production it clarifies a bit because you're a tad blurry on my end, but I think it ends up working out. So we'll trust our partner here in Riverside that they work out the technical kinks.
Got me thinking too when you mentioned that we're on Spotify. You learn something new every single day. According to your old bosses at JP Morgan, if you and I were to stream this on our phone for 24 hours, we could make $1,200 a month. So we might test that afterwards, although I think that was proven wrong.
Yeah, or we could, potentially do white noise tracks for 30 seconds, really hack the system. That's actually a hot topic, which is an interesting one. I saw big record labels are trying to rewrite how payouts go. I think an interesting point to start, just because this is episode 1, would be to just provide a little bit of background, and I can go first just to buy you time to think about it. I don't want to put you on the spot. Just to kind of tell the audience, anyone who goes back and listens to the OG episode, who we are, kind of what we're up to right now, and I guess why we're doing it or why we're passionate about it. I think just kicking it off, as you can see, we're more or less just having fun on this podcast and this forum. But taking a step back, I think we've been working together since I was probably 14 or 15 at the time when we started our first business, which was a sports agency, really just bred out of passion. We were the kids that showed up to the baseball stadium 2 hours before the game, which I know Mom loved, the fact that we were always there so early trying to hawk autographs and catch, foul balls and batting practice and stuff like that. But really, telling it from my perspective, it always came from just a love of the game, whether it was, sports or music, just genuinely loving being around, the field, the talent, the excitement, love competition, love to play. The famous saying, I hate to lose more than I like to win, I think is somewhat applicable to me. And I think that's translated throughout my career. So have a background in finance, started in asset management at JP Morgan, did a couple years there, and then did a stint in sports and entertainment at a ticketing startup called DTI that got acquired by a company called Ticket Evolution. Spent 3 years there in DC after 2 years in New York at JP. Came out to LA, did business school at UCLA, the heart and soul of media and entertainment, as everyone is aware, is in Los Angeles. And I thought it'd be a great way to step up my career trajectory. So pursued an MBA at UCLA, and ended up going into investment banking. So I spent a year at Moelis, a boutique investment bank, before officially embarking on the journey that we're on now at EQ, where we are. I'm full time. Aaron is part time, but just really having a lot of fun. And what we are today, it's funny because it's going to be great to revisit this down the line. What we are today is a ticketing company that aims to do things a bit differently, aims to bring together people through social features, and really in an age where I say like TikTok and Instagram, their whole goal is to get you addicted to their products so that you're glued to their app for 6 hours a day. Our winning outcome is that you love our product so much that you're going to more shows, you're going to more sports games, and you're meeting up with your friends more in person, or you're making new friends. So that's really the mission we're on. Hopefully that bought you enough time to to think about a little bit of background, but I think that'd be helpful for the audience to know.
Now, that was interesting that you mentioned, going to baseball games. I think something that even predates that, if you recall, how avid of baseball card collectors we are. And in many senses, something that I was thinking about the other day, we've carried kind of those same lessons from baseball card collecting into our business pursuits. By that, it's always more exciting as a collector to look for who's next up. People chase rookies, people chase prospects more so than they chase, the current best player in MLB. At that point, it's not that fun. Everyone wants to catch a wave early and 10x, 100x something. So it's kind of interesting now we're in a business venture backed where that's the goal is to 100x something or a minimal 10x something. So be part of an early movement. But even dating back to our autograph days when we'd go to the field early, we'd go and do it at the minor league level. We'd buy those prospect books and try to identify who in the top 25 was the next insert MLB All Star. So of course we loved going to Orioles games and trying to meet Miguel Tejada and Cal Ripken, and we did that a few times. But I distinctly remember the excitement you and I had. I think it was greater when we knew a prospect was going to be good in single A, double A, triple A. We got their autograph, and then they got called up. The name that comes to mind is Prince Fielder. I still remember, like you and I, talking to Prince Fielder. We went to back-to-back games, night games here in Huntsville. It was then the Stars. We met him. We started to talk to him. Remember the catcher, Eli Alfonso?
Yeah.
AJ Hardy was on the team. Just an awesome team. Ricky Weeks, and we know those guys were going to be studs. And we became instant fans, lifetime fans of them because we had such a good interaction with them. And it was pretty amazing then to see them go rise through the minor leagues, get to the big leagues, and then some of those guys, just have tremendous, tremendous careers. So that's a little bit of an aside, but it's kind of interesting. Like our foundations are baseball card collecting, and that kind of translates into what we're doing even at EQ.
Yeah, no, I don't even think that's an aside. I think that is the main course, and I'm curious because it got me thinking. Um, I would like to hear it from your perspective, for my own sake, and for any aspiring entrepreneurs. The glamorous life of working in either Hollywood or sports, or working with talent. Obviously, I understand from my point of view, but never really heard kind of as much from your perspective in kind of a long format forum such as this. Would just love to hear what was it like, being a 20-year-old, I think maybe 20, 19, 20, 21. What was that business like being an agent? Because I think it's something that, like, on the surface, everyone's like, oh, this is a dream career. I don't know, it can be, but what was it like?
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels like a lifetime ago. Obviously, and I didn't even give my background. I was thinking, but that's not even that important. It's not even exciting to hear about that. But yeah, I remember being at Pepperdine, sitting there and being such a small school, but a tremendous baseball program. Seeing these guys in my class every single day, Eric Thames and Chase Darno, and they were just superstars on the field. And then Ryan, you and I know this, we were tracking all the prospect lists. We knew in advance that they were going to get drafted pretty high. So I'd have conversations with these guys. Eric was in my stats class, for example, and you knew he was gone. Like, you knew he was gone. I still remember telling the story of, like, I think at the very end, we had to have a certain grade in order to pass. And he went there, and the professor told him something like, hey, even if you didn't show up to the final, you'll still pass this class. I never saw that man again. That guy was gone. So because he knew he was about to get drafted pretty high. So I guess yeah, put all your eggs in one basket and just watch it closely. He knew he was going to go pro, and he obviously did. So I had a chance to work with one or two of the guys that got drafted very, very late, and kind of off the record would advise them on their contract and called around doing kind of their sponsorship deals. And when I say sponsorship deals, I mean calling Rawlings General Line and trying to get $50 off on a glove. Regardless, it
Right.
was a good experience. And as you know, we kind of translated that into going after so many different prospects. Probably pursued like 100 different ones before we got to a yes, Brighton with the Pirates. And then that turned into, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 guys that we developed relationships with, probably signed 10, 12 of them because that's all we could have capacity for. So I remember being in law school and I'd be sitting there learning about contracts, and then these guys would be texting me questions about their contract. So I guess ignorance is bliss. Like now that I look back at it, that's wild.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was fun. It was chaos, but it was fun.
Yeah, I think that's right. It definitely was chaos, and it's fun to look back and think that we obviously had confidence in ourselves, but knowing that I think we were self-aware enough to know that we were somewhat minnows in the pond or the ocean. Like I think we saw it, and I think one of the kind of formative experiences for me working with talent was like anytime we would have someone get promoted to high A or double A, that was when all the like not even the sharks, like the mid-sized fish came swimming by and trying to like take our clients. And my takeaway from that was like working with talent is just really hard. The agent business is business on hard mode. Like people describe business as like if you had your choice of like B2C, B2B, I think it's like B2B is probably the most ideal. You're dealing with people who like whatever. They're still going to have their weekend. They're not upset when a deal falls through, that kind of thing. B2C, there's a ton of expectations that you're dealing with a lot of people. Working with talent is like a completely different like pain point. You're chasing like what were some of the I know you have stories on stories, but like working with these guys, what was it really like? Like you're driving down to spring training, taking them out to
Yeah.
Applebee's kind of thing.
Yeah, I wish it'd been Applebee's. They'd run it way more than Applebee's, buddy. But actually, oh yeah, that does remind me. We did go to Applebee's one time, but uh, no, the thing though that I was thinking about it as you said it is like any sports agent that's ever had clients and did things the right way, you always bet on them because you know that they have to be good salespersons. But right away, I had to figure out what my competitive advantages were because I wasn't the richest. I did not have guys on an MLB roster, but I could be present and I could identify with these guys. I still remember like there was a good player named Darren Watley. He went to Shelton State, threw about 95. Wild, great football player out of Bibb County, great baseball player, and he was being pursued by some of the biggest agents in the state at the time. He was top 100 prospect, I believe. The thing that set it apart, because he told me I was talking to every single agent, so I said, I'll be at every one of your games. I live down the street. And then that turned into, hey, my buddies can't throw today. Can you throw? And I remember thinking as I was out on the field and he was smiling as he was throwing just gas at me. First off, I was thinking I don't want to be an agent. But second, I was like, this kid better sign with me. So for a variety of reasons, he didn't go to the next level. But that's one of my fondest memories thinking about it now of when he told me, like, listen, dude, you're my guy. You're my guy. Like, I'm putting you
Yeah.
through the ringer. But none of these guys are going to come down here and throw with me. And that was just so much fun to be part of that. And that's how we kind of did it as a grassroots way. And looking back, like Tim Anderson was in town, started talking with him. So many like studs that we outkicked our coverage. Even meeting with, and that's just because we were there, we were in the scene. But to answer your question on like what it was like, just chaos. Yeah, I remember driving in the middle of my finals down to spring training or some test down to spring training, and just whirlwind of meeting with players, and then it's like the VC world. Like you have to claim you know somebody, and like you loosely know them, and that's how you get the meeting with the next person. And it's all about like appearances down there. So, in my case, I was fortunate. Like a couple of guys on the Pirates on the big league team kind of vouched for me, and I had a couple guys in the minor league system. So that led to me meeting quite a few more players and signing a couple more players when I was down there, getting to go out with them. It was fun. That was one of my best experiences I think I've ever had in my life. But and you also know this very well. You'd have those moments where after spring training, and players assigned to Double A, they thought they were supposed to go to Triple A, and I still remember the call. I won't say his name. He was 20 miles from his house and 5 states over when the Braves called and said, "Where's your boy?" And I said, "I don't know." So I called him. And he said, "You can tell the Braves to promote me, or I'm not coming back." I was like, "Listen, man, it's not going to go down like that." But okay. So I remember being on the phone with the assistant GM of the Braves, and I was like, with a straight face, I had to say, "What are the chances he can get promoted?" And he was like, "Nah, just tell him to keep driving."
Yeah, yeah, man, that yeah, you got to imagine that happens quite a bit, right? It's like everyone has supreme confidence to be taking these minor league salaries, believing and betting in themselves, sometimes skipping college to go straight to this pursuit, only to be told that you're gonna have to wait another year or two, right, to really advance. I think baseball is just like really, really hard. There's so many levels and so many players.
I think it's humbling. Something that I saw right away was all these guys were the best in their little league, best in their middle school, best in their high school. If they went to college, they were best in their college. Then they showed up and they were in a group where everyone fit that. And there was also some dudes that weren't even from the U.S. that were 3 years younger and just as good. So it was very, very humbling experience. I'd imagine it, the same as when you went to UCLA and did the MBA program. It's like everyone in the room is accomplished. So now how do you stand out and how do you be great and excel in that group? It's another cut. You have
Yeah.
to do that in baseball multiple times in order to make the big leagues. It's extremely difficult to even get called up to a big league roster. To stick around and have a career is next to impossible. So you have to be consistent, and then you have to somehow stay healthy and outwork everyone else that has similar levels of talent.
The health thing is like amazing because like that is such a factor in sports that like you don't see necessarily as much in business. Like of course, you might have like a founder that kind of falls off the map in terms of physical or mental health, but that's such an important aspect. You can have guys with all the talent in the world but just can't like stay off the injury list. And I was thinking like I was watching this like Coach Prime, Deion Sanders thing on Amazon Prime last night. It's really good, and he just kind of described what you described. He's like, or one of the coaches did, like, do the math. There's 32 teams. There's like way more colleges, obviously. This was when he was at Jackson State, and so they were trying to get scouts to come show up at Jackson State to try to get some of them, playing time. At the end of the day, it's just like the numbers are very difficult, and there is like a cut above when it comes to just like raw talent. And the interesting example that they obviously talk about a lot is Travis Hunter, who was the number one player out of high school. He went to Jackson State. It was a big deal because HBCU over like a Power Five conference, and he's just a cut above, right? Like he's one of those kids that when you see on the field, and I think everyone's starting to see it now at Colorado. He's playing both ways, which I've never even seen other than like Dion, like doing that much on the field, whether it's like playing special teams and offense and defense. It's like Dion was probably one of the last guys that had that ability, but it's crazy to see this kid playing 100 plus snaps at Colorado today. And I'm curious, like going back to the injury point, and it might have been some of the guys you mentioned earlier, but it might not have been. What comes to mind when it comes to just like that supreme cut of talent above the rest, whether it was baseball players or like even some of the musicians that we worked with? Was there anyone that comes to mind that like the first time you saw them play or perform or whatever, you're like, this guy or girl is like different, but because of 75 factors, like they just didn't make it, or maybe they did. But like, talk about like scouting that talent and actually like being able to see that delta between like the next level.
You put me on the spot.
Like it
Like the
could have
name
been some of those guys. Like Prince Fielder was one of those guys. He was hitting 400-foot home runs in Double A in Huntsville,
yeah,
um, and no one else could hit it out of the infield.
they think these guys. The thing is, like they had more in common than they had, that separated them. Right? They were all big. They were all super fit. Like you've met some of them. Some of them are 6'6", 6'7". So I remember when one of my clients got drafted the same year that Jameson Taillon got drafted, and they were the exact same size. Exact same size. They both threw about 98. The difference is Jameson could consistently throw it over the plate. My guy was like Bull Durham, like the mascot started to hide in the dugout when he started to warm up. I started to hide, and I was like in the upper deck. So you just
Uh,
knew that was going to be chaos. So it was like consistency. The name that comes across like is probably the best like all around talent that I've ever seen. And I mentioned him earlier was Watley, and he didn't even get drafted. Everything this dude did, you could just see he was a natural athlete. He could throw a football 40 yards on a line. He could hit the baseball. He could throw it 95 with 5 warm-ups. Just a country kid that could do anything. He could swing a golf club and somehow just stripe it down the middle. It's just naturally gifted. Wasn't the type that had parents that spent $50 bazillion for him to go to every perfect game tournament. Didn't come for much, but just had God given talent. But something more interesting, as you were saying, that was some of the work ethic of some of the guys that like just jumped out. And the name that comes to mind was Ian Rice. You remember Ian out of Madison Academy in Huntsville? Never seen work ethic like that. And I think he's a superb talent. Obviously, I didn't represent him. I represented him in high school when he got drafted by the Cardinals. He didn't sign. He went to Chipola. But the way that kid worked, even as a high school senior, he was always in the cages. He was always wanting to throw. He was always just trying to get better. And it was him versus him. Like his own team didn't care that much. He was using a wood bat in high school because he wanted to prep for the next level. It wasn't to put on a show or like have any airs about him. If no one was watching, he was working hard. And I wasn't surprised when he got all the way to AAA on just work ethic alone because he's different. I figured he would be the type that would learn every single pitcher's routine, learn exactly what they wanted to throw, and be kind of like a fan favorite. I mean, a pitcher favorite in that sense. So like he stands out as so self driven. It wasn't even funny. So that was probably
yeah.
the most intriguing person I ever saw. Like I knew he was going to make it if he stayed healthy. I knew he was going to be a really, really good professional baseball player.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Like I do remember him, and it's interesting that some people there are a million vectors of success, and he was one of those guys that was maxed out and different on kind of the work ethic. To your point, as we just said, it takes multiple being that guy in multiple categories, and then probably being lucky, and then not getting hurt in order to make it. And I just remember thinking once we started, having people get hurt, people getting poached, we kind of hit a point where I think you were graduating and going into big law, and I was, I think, going to UVA or something at the time, undergrad. And we kind of came to this point where we kind of looked at it, and we had a good friend of ours, Johnny Yetzi, who was with us at the time, and I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall that ultimately, at least at this point in time, it wasn't sustainable. I think, but there were a lot of obviously great takeaways. One of which I started to really become enamored with the idea of startups and like venture capital and picking winners and investing and all that kind of stuff. And I credit it to a lot of the experiences we had um, at the sports agency. Like it's the reason I wanted to be an asset manager at JP Morgan. I thought it was like the perfect mix of being able to work through investments, work with clients. And so great experiences. I'm curious, like drawing the parallels, because I felt like that was like a very, very easy thing to point to as a driving force. Like I literally picked my major, like, hey, I want to be a business major. I want to do investments, like right after we kind of wound down the shop. I'm curious, like where you see those experiences, if at all, like they might not reappear like in your day to day. Like, well, what kind of experience, skill set do you find you most usually are taking away from those experiences while at
Sales,
EQ,
man.
for instance?
Sales. You know this. We'd spend hours. You and Johnny were just dogs, and we'd have like a reduced list of the 100 players we wanted to work with, and we would do some outreach. But we got humbled so many times. Like
We're sending thousands of Facebook messages a month. Yeah, the three
worse
of
than that,
us.
man. I would drive 3 4 hours, sit in the Starbucks for someone to tell me like, dude, I signed with an agent 2 days ago, and you're like, why am I even here? But then you'd have to like just keep a straight face, try to learn something, try to see if they knew someone else that was trying to go pro. So, that humility of like being told, no, I'm not going to go with you 100 times. And that's kind of where I developed my phrase of like, if you have a 2% chance of success, meet with 50 people, meet with 100 people, because then you're going to get one to sign. And then it gets substantially easier once you have like one person that you're rocking with. So the same thing, like what we're doing with EQ, even when we first started, it was make that first sale. What are we doing? Like, how do we make that first sale? And it was hand to hand combat. But I'm not afraid to fail. I also know that when our research is really good and we've done our homework, we stand as good a chance as anyone else. So it's that confidence in myself, it's a confidence in my team, and then it's putting yourself out there and being able to deliver to them like why I think I can drive value for them. So I think that was a lesson. That was the greatest takeaway from being an agent. Was all those times, 100 times, 1,000 times, I've gotten the text or I've gotten the call. Hey, we're not going to be going with you. Right. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that
And
answered
maybe,
your question, but
yeah, it does. And maybe to wrap a bow on it, like I think the point of like this podcast again, like we're kind of going a little free form, but I do want to point out that I think being an agent can be a great career, and like not to discourage anyone who's thinking about it. I think the idea is to just kind of shed light on the realities of it. And obviously we were young, right? We weren't going down the traditional path of like working at CAA or something like that. But I'm curious, like, what do you think? What do you perceive as the traditional path these days? It's probably going to like CAA or UTA or Octagon, right, or something like that. Like, if you're out of school, like, how do you pursue that route? You have to be an assistant, right? Is that still the kind of the path?
I don't know because we never did it. I mean, we started to have conversations with some of those groups when we developed a roster. I remember one agent in particular, he was on the way out, offered to kind of fund us, but he wanted a deal terms that even back then we knew was too much. I'd say step one, if you grow up next to a player who ends up in the Hall of Fame, that's pretty helpful.
That happens
Like,
more
'cause-
more often than not, right? I feel like we always saw that. We
yeah,
were like, oh, that guy was like, I'm just making this up, but like, oh, that guy was Tim Tebow's roommate or something. It's like, oh, that works.
I don't know. I think it's being smart, being in the mix. Going to Harvard isn't going to sign you a first rounder. Like, it's just not going to sign you a first rounder. Nobody cares. I think it's important to play the game and understand the game. It's hard to represent a pitcher when you don't understand what a pitcher does, right? Like you're not understanding their fears. You're not able to like mentally coach them or encourage them. Because the time that I would talk to those guys the most was normally when they were down. When they're good, like everybody's happy, right? Like when you're hitting well, when you're pitching well. But how about those nights when they've lost? They gave up 4 runs. They blew the save, and they don't even know if they want to do it anymore. So it's at that point where like you have to be a great motivator. You have to be able to speak to them, explain to them like, no, you have the talent, you belong. Last night was an anomaly. It happens. Like, let's go. So I'd say like the greatest strength that someone could have is like being able to build relationships, going out there like early on and talking to the players. Like you and I didn't even realize it, but when we were 12, 13, 14, and we'd be talking to the players like that set the foundation for me being later able to go talk to the players. We had been around them our whole lives, so it wasn't anything new. Like I wasn't overwhelmed by the moment. I talked to 1,000 different minor league players, getting their autographs and asking them, about something like, "Hey, how are you enjoying Double A? How are you enjoying Triple A?" Or we'd ask them about their gloves, whatever it was. So I don't know, just being part of the scene. Like it wasn't a last second thing that you and I decided to become agents. I feel like we always wanted to do it, and then we took the right steps. I don't know. Hard to articulate that.
Yeah,
There is
no,
no
I
there
mean
is
it
no
is.
path to being an agent. There's no path to being an agent. It's just like
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's well, let's say it like this. There's a million paths, right? To
yeah,
really anything, and especially being an agent. Like if your neighbor ends up being, I don't know, some Hall of Famer, like that's obviously probably the most straightforward way. But even those guys have to grind and have to learn, have to figure it out. Like someone like Maverick Carter is not an idiot, right? He played basketball with LeBron, but like he was the leading scorer, I think, for their team, or maybe number two. Maybe I think LeBron as a freshman was the number one, and Mav as a senior was like number two at 70 points a game. So he was a good basketball player in his own right. He obviously learned the business, itself in terms of how to best market and represent LeBron. So I think people tend to, um, you know, cheapen and not give kudos because they make it look easy, even when you are in that situation.
The other thing is something that you kind of touched on earlier, and I want to revisit. Like, we didn't level up from being an agent. Agent is a tremendously difficult career, and it's an amazing career. If you have a great agent, it's like having a great attorney. Like, they can change the trajectory of your career. I really believe that. Like, having the right advisor, the right people around you, like, truly, truly a game changer. So hats off to those that have been very successful in the agent game and have been doing it for a long, long time. I think for me, it just wasn't a fit for me and what I wanted to pursue. The other thing I started to realize more and more was the time commitment, the way that these guys actually lived. I started to like reach out to some and have a couple become mentors. They were always on the road, right? Client comes first. So you think it's really cool to have 10 different clients on 10 different teams, but you need to be traveling with them. You need to be taking care of their family, making sure their family can get to those games. If there's an all-star game, you're at the all-star game. In the off season, you're where they're at a lot of the times. So it's very, very time consuming and it's a lifestyle choice. It's not for everyone. So just keep that in mind. I would tell anybody who thinks about being an agent, even once you reach the top, it does not get easier.
Yeah, I think that probably is the case for many services businesses, whether it's big law, banking. It's just like you're kind of beholden to the client at the end of the day, and you differentiate by going above and beyond, and everyone's kind of going above and beyond. So
That's actually what I was going to ask you, because I saw that in the legal world, but you probably saw that at your time at different institutions. The top guys still work extremely hard. And in fact, they have more responsibility because they should know better if a mistake happens. And it's their job to supervise everybody on the team. Like, they don't have anyone else to blame. The junior person, if they screw up, that's dumb. But somebody should have supervised them probably better. And I found that one time I was talking to a law partner, and he said, "Listen, there's very few things that you can mess up as an associate that's going to get you in trouble. Like $5 mistakes don't matter. $500 mistakes, like those are going to happen. $5,000 mistakes, like those are really bad. But if you make a $50,000 mistake, if you make a $500,000 mistake, that's because someone didn't properly supervise you. You shouldn't have even been in a position to make that type of mistake." And that's what kept him up at night. And I thought that was kind of remarkable because that's a different type of pressure.
yeah, I think that perfectly applies to banking, asset management, whatever you will. Um, I think the biggest takeaway for me is like you gotta you do have to clear your eyes a bit and look at the reality of the most senior people at the firm and say, do I want to be doing that job? Because I think an interesting like idea is like that I heard the other day is like the reward for doing good work is actually like more work. Like if you're really good at your job, it just means you're going to have more responsibility, whether, not necessarily longer hours. Like as an analyst, you're going to be working longer hours than a managing director or a partner, but you're given much more responsibility. So it's not like you're done when you get promoted to VP and then, director or whatever. But I think a lot of people forget that because they're like, oh, if I just stick it out 7 years in big law, I'll make partner. And it's like, I mean, that's like, it's kind of backwards. So, that one is just like worth examining. One thing I do want to get to as just kind of like a final topic is kind of we talked about a lot of background pieces and setting the foundation for really both of our careers, but bringing us back into the present. I think one exciting win that I always want to touch on really present notes and what we're doing, because I think this will be a really cool kind of scrapbook and timeline of what we're up to, both individually, collectively, and kind of with EQ and other business endeavors. Is you just recently got a cool position with Techstars, which I think really builds on everything that we just talked about in experience. But like, what is that all about? Like, what energy does that bring to you? Why are you doing it? Why are you curious? Why are you excited to do it? And how does it kind of relate to everything we just talked about of kind of the grind, the sales, the coaching, the mentorship, all of that kind of stuff of being a sports agent?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty cool. I'm pretty humbled first and foremost because I have the title of mentor and I'm thinking I don't know anything. And I know this is going to go online and those guys are going to probably see it. And they're like, yeah, we thought that too. But but I don't know, like just the excitement of getting to work with entrepreneurs in this state. You know, you and I are both from Huntsville, Alabama. a lot of really smart people here. But I didn't know anybody growing up that went into venture capital. I didn't know anybody that like thought they were going to work on Wall Street. You ended up working on Wall Street. So like you and I kind of like carved out our own paths, and we've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And I'm hoping to be able to go in there and work with some others here locally and tell them about my mistakes and world according to Aaron. And here's how I would have done it differently. And maybe it'll help shape some of their decisions, but also just the energy and excitement around a startup and an idea. And sometimes being naive, sometimes being a little bit ignorant to the chances of success. Like that's really, really good energy. And that's the one thing that I like about startup founders is they're optimists and they believe that they can do something, even if the odds are against them. And that's just fun to be around. So I am going to be part of Techstars like mentor class. I'm going to be spending some time in Birmingham. I think I have to be there next week. And I'm just excited to learn too. I reviewed the decks for some of the new companies and I don't understand half the terms. And I'm going to be open with them and tell them like that's part of this game is learning, right? Asking questions and getting better. So hopefully we can all learn from each other and maybe I can apply some things that I'm seeing that are working well with other companies into my day to day with EQ. And then maybe I can take some of the things that I've picked up from EQ and life and help another rising entrepreneur. So I kind of view it as I'm getting just as much out of this as hopefully I'm giving back.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's totally collaborative opportunity, and it strikes me. You mentioned Birmingham. Obviously, we're from Alabama, and Birmingham is a growing city. But just going back to the top of the call, what we said is just like there's nothing more exciting than seeing something grow from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10. Like there's something probably all
It's the best.
humans like seeing that growth process or just being a part of something, feeling a part of something. And I don't see what you're doing. It's like the way you just described an entrepreneur. It's like they might as well be in single A at the Huntsville Stars and Ricky Weeks, Prince Fielder, JJ Hardy playing in the middle of nowhere, Huntsville. That's kind of the equivalent of an accelerator or pre-accelerator or whatever seed stage startup, right? So I think it's really cool. There's a lot of symmetry, and I think it's going to be really interesting to learn kind of as a beneficiary on the periphery here. So I'm
And
excited for you.
and
It's
not
a
to
great opportunity.
not to read too much and not to read too much into it, but like that got me thinking. Like I was speaking to like the agent lifestyle. The thing I did the most was talk to these guys late at night when they were having problems. I think that's probably what these guys need more so than anything. It might not be technical guidance, it might not be product guidance, it might just be keeping them motivated. Because I've been in their shoes, like I've been there, and you've been there with me. Man, this didn't work, or this is failing, and it's do I quit? Do I just kind of like put my head down in the sand? Do I give up, or do I kind of find a way to pivot? Or is there a way out? Like what do I do next? Like what's my Johnny Manziel move, or am I just going to get sacked? And that's something that I'm looking to bring too is like that energy. Like, listen, dude, like you got this far. Like you're in Techstars. This is a great idea. You're extremely smart. You got somebody to give you some money to back probably you more so than the idea. It's okay to throw away something that's not working and switch up course. Have some confidence. You know this lane better than anyone. This is what you live. Let's go. Let's win. Right. And let's brainstorm together. Let's come up with a solution. It doesn't have to be tonight, but we're not quitters. And that's hopefully what I can bring because I've been in those same positions and you've had to do that to me and I've had to do that to you and we've had to do that to others. And it's kind of I don't know, fraternity, sorority. It's kind of like a one team. Like if you've been doing this, like we all feel kind of aligned with anyone else who's also a founder.
Definitely, it's all about continually improving, collaborating, getting better together. So I think you summed it up well when you said it that way. But yeah, we'll keep tabs on that. It'll be fun to update that as we kind of crank these podcasts out, how that's progressing, how that's creating real time learnings. And I'm excited, like I said, to always kind of just bring this to the present and share what we're doing. Hopefully the audience can start to latch on to some of the things that we're doing and see what we're building in real time. And I think it'll be really fun. It'll be a way to include, our friends, our family, new friends, strangers that become, part of our journey as well. So I'm really excited. I think that's a great place to kind of put a bow and wrap on episode 1. Any parting thoughts? Any exciting activities this weekend? Alabama's coming off a loss. versus Texas. Maybe get back on the winning side of the column. But any other things? Connor's got a soccer game.
Yeah,
What are we looking at?
headed to Franklin, Tennessee. Connor's got a soccer tournament. So as you know, in about 8 years, I'm not going to have to do this because he's going to probably be a first round draft pick. So I'm just kind of buying some time right now, messing around. But no, that'll be fun. I'm about to be a taxi all weekend, and my voice is already hoarse, but that'll probably be in his favor because then I can't yell as much at what to do. And one of my funniest things, Ryan, you'll appreciate this, is like, listen, dude, like I'm yelling at you to like do these things, but I don't want you to think I knew how to actually do them either. So I'm definitely just like mad at myself for what I could have been. And the other funny thing, Ryan, you'll appreciate is like Dad was giving Connor some advice the other day, and I said, I don't remember you ever like coaching me like that. Like you didn't seem to care. And he goes, you weren't this good.
Yeah,
I tell
yeah.
Connor, like, listen, dude, like you're doing fantastic. Like your worst game was my best game. My dad would have taken me out to ice cream if I played like you did tonight.
That's
Meanwhile, I'm like,
right.
oh, you didn't have a hat trick? What's going on, man? So
That's
yeah,
right.
we're gonna have some fun this weekend, and look forward to having you get out this fall and seeing him in action.
Definitely. Can't wait to make it out to a game. And yeah, that's a good point. We won't have to worry about selling Messi tickets in 8 years when we got Messi in house. So
Yeah,
appreciate that. It's a
knowing the
final
agent
thing.
game, they'll probably send me the same text I got from 50 others. Like, unfortunately, this is not a good fit.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be DMing him on Instagram. Yeah, my own nephew, you know, hitting
And sorry,
post.
sorry to any Alabama fans out there. Alabama, it sucks that we lost, but I'm rooting for any team in NCAA football that people buy tickets from EQ tickets.
Yeah,
I
always,
don't
always,
even care.
always be selling, always be closing. I think
Yeah.
we'll be pumping out a good amount of updates on the EQ end, and as well as getting active on social. So stay tuned for more. I appreciate you
All
tuning
right.
in for episode 1. Thanks for joining me,
Love you,
Ryan.
brother. See you soon, baby.
All right, see you guys.